Mike. Okay. Thank you all for coming to this unpanel. It is an unpanel. I am Crystal Preston-Watson. Let me actually introduce myself. I'm assuming you shouldn't assume anything, as my grandma would say, because you make out of me and you. So let me not assume. I am Crystal Preston-Watson. I am the Senior Digital Accessibility Analyst at Salesforce, and I'm tasked with internal digital accessibility for Salesforce employees. And yeah, welcome to the closing keynote panel, and that is from today till tomorrow, navigating the shifting landscape of digital access. And so I'm just going to quickly say, I was inspired by the unconference sessions that were happening. I really wanted this panel to feel like it was a collaborative effort. And I'm someone that I perform improv comedy, and I wanted to do that kind of impromptu-ness in there, so it doesn't feel like a very, just kind of like binary, like this and this and this and this. So that is just thought of this particular format. So next slide, please. So what we are going to do in this panel is that instead of me asking questions to the panelists, they chose from some public submitted questions before this panel, and the panelists they'll have 10 minutes to respond to those questions. But then I am going to ask for your help and ask you to volunteer. And the way you would volunteer is that in between our panelists, I want to ask one of you in the audience, and that's both in person and remotely, to kind of be an impromptu panelist. So there is a QR code on the screen, and there's also a URL, and I'm going to read this URL. Really, so you can, so if you can't use a QR code, I will say it slowly, maybe you can get to this URL, but it's forms.gle, is it forward slash? Oh yeah, let's go. /V3RZ-DZ-TKR68BFXRK9. And that takes you to a form, and you can volunteer to be one of our audience panelists. You'll get 2 minutes in between each panelists to either respond to a question they asked, to make a statement about digital accessibility, or anything. Please keep it to digital accessibility. If you want to talk about like your kids, or I don't know, your breakfast, you can tell me after. I'll listen to it. But for your 2 minutes, keep it to digital accessibility, and that's really it. We want to, and if none of you volunteer, it's improv, and we'll kick it back to a regular Q&A from the audience. So that is really it. And if you do volunteer, I have some lovely stickers. I'll give you a sticker. I will give you a sticker. This sticker is the Salesforce mascot, Astro, with a A11Y shirt on. I have a lot of these stickers. I don't know why, and I want to get rid of them, so please volunteer. I will give you a bunch. I won't just give you one. I'll give you a lot, and that goes for the remote people. If you give me your email in that form, I will send you stickers. I'm sweetening the deal. Okay, let's go. So I'm done. So we're going to do next slide. And that's because Adrian is up first. So, big round of applause.
I'm assuming everybody can hear me.
Next slide.
Because it's weird to ask, can you hear me? Because then it's just silence. How's the audio? Do I need to speak more quietly. Okay, I'll make some noises just so you can adjust, I guess. Oh, there it is. Am I good? I mean, I've seen that Star Trek movie. It doesn't end well. Well, this is definitely the right room. So I have a timer here, which I'm going to start now, and I want to manage expectations a little bit here because Crystal talked about this being improv, and most people think improv is comedy. This isn't funny for me, so when you're laughing, I'll know it's because I've done something terrible. Thank you. I have I have stickers, weird. You should ask me about those. And I don't know if there's a slide with the question, and if not, I have written it down. I took some notes. I did not prepare slides. I took some really sloppy notes. I've been distracted from, things, so I'm gonna try to make some sense here. Oh, there they are. Oh, it's all three.
Yes.
All three at once. I'm gonna tackle the first one. The Department of Justice recently withdrew ADA guidance from its website. How can individuals ensure that businesses remain compliant with accessibility? So I think this one's kind of a straightforward answer. And if you're outside the US, there's a lot of international law that you can lean on. If you're inside the US, anyway, if you're inside the US, there are state laws, and in some cases there are municipal laws, and you can use those to at least try to affect some change. I want to note that Lainey Feingold has a global law and policy page on her site that's spectacular for looking at global laws, and Ken Nakata does a monthly update on, I think it's Converge Accessibility. He does a monthly roundup, and that includes following what states are doing and where specific states are with their efforts or lack of efforts in some cases. So the legal aspect, you can consider using lawsuits or threats of lawsuits as a hammer. Sometimes it's the only way to affect change. That sucks, but that's reality of where we are. I think Eve Hill did a great talk about how private litigation is effective and almost ironically can end up costing companies more than if they just went through the DOJ's process of remediating stuff. And then I'm always a fan of public shaming, but that's just me. Doesn't work for everybody. Doesn't even work for me. Thanks, I think. But whatever you do, I always suggest contact the organization, find out, see if you can help them if you have the capacity for it. But whatever you do when you contact them, please document it because you might not be the only one. And if there is a case or a class action or something, it's nice to have that information recorded. Really, I don't have a lot of notes. So next one. The nice thing about going first is I get to sort of set the tone for everybody else. And then making it awkward for you, Mark, and both of you, really. Glad I could contribute. So the second question, what tools and resources are available to assist developers in testing and validating the accessibility of their digital products? Now, I feel a little bit bad about this because I put together a very brief set of notes, and then I went and saw Nicholas Cook talk this morning about the broader automation testing process and flow. Nicholas, are you here? Yeah, just go talk to him. Okay. He did a good talk this morning. His slides are there, but I think one of the first things to keep in mind is that if you want to, as a developer, learn AT. Like, you're not going to be an expert at it. Get users involved. You're not going to find all the users that you need, but really get humans involved because in the end, the work that you're doing is about supporting humans, and we like humans for now. So get users involved, learn AT if you can, look at the browsers, look at the browser dev tools, and then understand that there's a ton of resources out there from the W3C's Web Accessibility Initiative. They have videos, they talk about use cases, they show people using assistive technology. There's a ton of supporting content available for free. There are also boatloads of people's blogs. I would promote mine, except I'm wrong a lot. So, go somewhere else. Also, you have to think about what it is that you're testing. And when are you testing in the workflow? Because you could just get a code linter, and that's great for making sure that you're enforcing some internal rules, but that's dramatically different than making sure that the output of your code and those user flows and those journeys, or whatever people are calling things now, are still working and functional and valid. I'm a fan of custom rules if you're going to use any automated testing tools, because they can speak better to whether your design system or whatever other rules you have are holding up. And ideally, in a more mature organization, you've got a good sense of what your internal rules and guidelines are anyway. If you're not a more mature organization, I do have consulting experience. Why do people laugh at me as being a consultant? This is so awkward. No matter what happens, remember though that WCAG itself really is only testable at about, the 20 to 30% range, depending on factors. Carl Groves, you've probably heard of him, wrote about this, a decade plus ago. Steve Faulkner, someone else you might have heard of, just ran through and justified why he thinks those numbers are still valid. So understand automation is going to have limitations, but it's still something that you should be folding in as early in the process as possible. In particular, I'm a big fan of shifting left, and I think shifting as far left as you can includes involving your researchers and people who are defining the scope to begin with. So I know the question was about supporting devs and testing and validating, but realistically you want to try to have all this stuff buttoned up so that the devs don't have to do as much of a heavy lift. I'm gonna stop there, otherwise I'm gonna risk rambling. And also because the third question is the one that I wanted to save the most time for, and I've intentionally saved the littlest time for. Why are people in the accessibility field so hostile to AI when AI could provide an easier way for companies to provide accessibility to customers? So this question in particular jumped at me because I wanted to address sort of the implication here. First of all, the idea of hostile is a word that the person who asked the question chose. They chose hostile. That tells me that they have some thoughts, they've had some experiences. I don't want to invalidate that, but there's a sense there that the industry might be hostile. And I'm not so sure that I agree with practitioners being hostile about AI. I think that there is a ton of learned experience from relying on things that have claimed AI. We have how many years now of overlay companies claiming that they do AI and that have resulted in worse outcomes for users. So it makes sense if you're an accessibility practitioner that you are wary. It makes even more sense if you're a disabled accessibility practitioner that you're more than wary, that you've seen this happen before, that you've heard promises. And that question used, the phrase could provide an easier way. And the implication being that we're not there yet, because we're not, but someday we will be. So there's this big concern amongst practitioners about, is this a disability dongle? Is that what we're stumbling into? But also practitioners, from my experience, recognize how broken the web is. Let me just spin up the web a million. Anybody off the top of their head, how many pages have accessibility barriers? I'm going to run with all of them because it's not necessarily wrong. And if we consider that all LLM models, which is really, the questioner didn't define AI, and that's okay. And I'm going to run at it primarily from the context of LLMs. But if we understand that the corpus of information they're trained on is itself fundamentally inaccessible in many new and exciting ways, every time somebody rolls out some new weird pattern, it's fair to assume that the garbage in, garbage out model applies. That doesn't mean the output from an LLM is necessarily wrong, but it doesn't mean that it's always going to be right. It means that we still have to have humans in the loop. And I said this before about accessibility is for humans. It's not for AIs, it's not for checklists, it's not for, some organizations are going to have very specific goals for it, but we're doing the work because I like to think because we want to support our fellow humans. And part of that ensures that part of that is about ensuring the work that we do isn't creating more harm. So you still have to have a human in the loop. You still have to understand what it is putting out. You have to recognize the data it's trained on. And when we see products like Figma sites rolling out just last week, which is creating hilariously problematic stuff, imagine all those new sites get slipped up into it, that corpus of training data gets depressed in quality yet again. So I think that's an ongoing concern. I have, what, 15 seconds left?
Yeah.
I have a minute and a half. Did I start my thing too early? Oh, did you? I have that problem too, which is problematic for public transportation. The biggest thing I think that practitioners, though, are resisting at some level is recognizing that some organizations are going to put their jobs at risk. I am already aware of a team, anecdotally, who went with a product that just introduced its AI solution. They laid off the entire accessibility team. It has cost jobs, which means some organizations aren't running at it correctly. But on top of that, it's the concept of eating your seed corn. I don't know if that's a familiar concept for you, but farmers, they take I'm really going to oversimplify. The corn that you harvest one year, you set aside an amount of it that you don't eat so you can plant it again the next year. So you can eat here. But the risk here is by minimizing the work that humans do and replacing them with technologies, that there are going to be not just companies and organizations, but potentially an entire industry that is going to eat its seed corn and will no longer have people who are developing the skills, who are figuring out how to address whatever the hot new technology framework or library is, and solving for those things that would, in essence, train that next generation of LLM to be slightly less problematic or awful. I'm assuming I'm pretty much at my time. Mark and I were chatting before this, though, and Mark, you had talked about you were maybe going to answer this question, and I riffed on it a little bit, and it's basically, oh, AI is here. Thank you for coming to the last AccessU ever. We're done. It's all solved. Everything's perfect. There is reality for you. So I think I'm done. I'm gonna call that done, and this is the part where now the audience does things.
Yes, so the person that is getting selected is Christina. Are you in person or are you remote? If okay. Christina, okay. Oh, yes, yeah, that was me. It was, oh gosh, I'm gonna mess up your last name. Christina, M-A-G.
Oh, behind Sharon?
Yeah. Oh,
Behind Sharon.
yeah. So you have 2 minutes. You can either respond to questions that Adrian
Hi, Christine.
had, or you can ask him more questions, or you can make statements. So you now have 2 minutes.
Okay.
The floor is
thanks.
yours.
Let's see here. I didn't think I was going to get picked, and I didn't know what I was putting my name in for, but let's go. So I am in a mid-size agency, and we are a little nervous about getting everything accessible for our website and our documents. Do you have any tips or tricks in getting our ACT members involved or excited and to help us with that?
Sorry, I'm doing this thing where I'm struggling with hearing it, and I'm trying to rely on the captions as well. Yeah, it's okay. I'm used to always being a little bit behind. So I want to restate it to make sure I understood it. You work in an agency and you're trying to get which numbers up?
Well, we're of course wanting to be compliant with our website and all of our documents to be accessible.
Okay.
And we are a little nervous about that, and we don't know how to actually tackle that all at once.
Oh, so you're running at this sort of at the first time for the first time.
Yes.
Yeah, well, my simplest answer to that is if you're brand new to this is find a consultant. And that's not because I want you to hire me. Don't. I'm terrible. But find a consultant, because the very first thing that somebody will need to do is they have to have some experience in the work, in the industry, so they can at least help you formulate a plan. They'll need to sit down with you, identify what capacity you have in-house, what skills you have, get a sense of the scope of the work. And I'm oversimplifying, but basically pull all of this together so they can help you come up with a realistic plan so you can tackle this. And that might not even be the consultant that does the work. And that's okay too. And you should manage their expectation from the start, because you might need to hire a document remediation company. You might be able to do everything in-house with some training. So hire somebody, get them in, give you some guidance. Don't expect that they need to be the one who's going to do the work for you, because in an ideal scenario, my opinion is you do the work yourself and you get trained up and potentially staffed up so that you can do it, and then have an ongoing arrangement for, ad hoc support as needed. That's my model. Doesn't mean it's necessarily the right model.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Yes, that was actually super perfect. That was about 2 minutes, so. Okay, so I, I'm hoping that you're enjoying this unpanel and, and how it's going, because I know I'm really enjoying it. So, next up will be Natalie, and I think Natalie couldn't be here, but let's just stare Natalie's picture. Thank you I'm sad that you couldn't join us today, but thank you for volunteering, Natalie. She's they're awesome. So thank you so much. So now we are going to go to next slide. We're gonna go to Mark now. So please welcome Mark.
Drums in the room, so I don't want to do that. Hello, I'm Mark Stedman. I am the accessibility squad lead at Fidelity Investments for the brokerage accessibility team. Some of my homies are back there in the back row, so my pressure's on right now to speak well for us. So I can just jump right into questions, because it's going to take me a while to get through some of these. So this first question is something that I'm extremely passionate about. How can tech companies foster a culture that prioritizes accessibility throughout the development lifecycle? Adrian had some really great points about the tooling pieces along the way. And I think one of the things that I need to share before I dive into this question is, I used to be that bullheaded developer. I was. My first job, Julie Romanowski, statefarm.com, I was a developer, and accessibility came into the fold. And I was that dev that was like, I don't have any time for this stuff. I'm not doing that, right? Just another process on top of Jira, on top of unit testing, all that stuff. I don't have time for that crap, right? But in that time frame, one, I realized I was wrong, first and foremost, so just so everybody knows. But two, I realized the big issue. Development teams are so hard to crack. It's like an outer shell that if you just go in and say, hey, go use tools, they'll say, fantastic, I'm using tools, we're accessible now, right? If you don't give them any guidance, it's a hard shell to crack. And so when I like talking about this, or why I like talking about it, is because there is a way to slowly crack that shell. And it's just a few simple steps to get there. So again, back to my point of, if you just throw something at a development team, they are going to reject it holistically immediately. They already have 1,000 things to worry about, right? Maybe 999, but what's 1,000 if you add accessibility to it, right? Start simple. Whether you're a mobile application team, whether you're a web application team, start simple. Start enforcing semantic elements. The amount of development libraries out there right now, JavaScript frameworks, Swift UI, Jetpack Compose, name it. You can make custom elements all day, and then you have to train everybody up on how to be ARIA ninjas, and we don't want that, right? So use semantic elements, right? And that's a big piece with it. But that's just a starting point. Because yes, the automated tools that Adrian all had mentioned before, too, they're a key factor in this. Yes, automated tools. I'm keeping the keyword of AI out of this, okay? Automated tools, something like AxeCore, right? Or Lighthouse, or the Wave tool, right? Using those initially and giving some teams guidance on how to do them and use them properly in their development environment helps. I'll give an example. if I'm working with a team that develops in React and I want a really quick kick in the door to say, hey, let's start doing this stuff, don't just go to them and say, use a linter. Go to them and say, hey, I know this specific linter out here that's a JSX linter. It's got accessibility rules on. Let's just start here. Now, everybody in here might look at me and say, okay, yeah, like we just heard Adrian say, this is like the lower, low to the floor of what it is, right? But the idea is you're building that culture of accessibility up. So even if the linting rules are a start, and I hear the word accessibility as a developer, now I'm starting to hear that, okay, yeah, this is going to be something I have to deal with, right? And I can move on to other levels of automation too, which is like UI testing. I could add something like one of the Axe open source pieces into my UI test, and now I'm functionally hearing those things along the way. But this is where everybody tends to make the mistake. They stop and they say, okay, so I've done the automation, I'm good, I'm accessible, right? Reality is that in order to enforce a culture and start getting the norm of accessibility, like this is part of what we do, you have to start enforcing it. So when you do linters, when you do automation, block builds, GitHub actions, say no, start rejecting it. And again, yes, it's the lower like 1/5 of accessibility issues, totally understand that. But again, it goes back to norms, blocking developers from being able to commit. That makes them realize that accessibility matters to your organization and where you're going, right? But that's not the end point, because once you do that, what comes next, right? And this is where everybody tends to say, well, it's too hard to get manual testing. There's too hard to level up my developers to learn screen readers and do testing. Baloney. They can, right? But it's fitting it into what development teams do. So even as simple as a definition of done for each story that goes through for work, saying, hey, I use my automation. There's automation checks for accessibility. They're done. And I did keyboard testing just as a starting point, right? Simple, subtle steps into development lifecycle helps. It does. I've seen it work wonders. I am literally the story right here on the stage right now. I wouldn't be talking about accessibility about this if I didn't go through this. It helps. It helps teams get there. And then the beauty of it is, as simple as that is, it's not 100%. No, not at all. But as you keep taking those gradual steps of more, and then, because you will get developers and teams then that start to say, what's next? And that's what you want. Then you know you started to foster that culture of accessibility throughout the development lifecycle, right? So that's really a big one. I do like an hour-and-a-half talk on this, so I probably just spent all my time talking on that one. But that's it in simplistic form. The other question that I had was similar to one that Adrian had, which is what strategies can regular people take to counteract the governmental rollbacks of DE&I and promote digital accessibility? So first off, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Illinois. And one of the things I would just say in general is it's just pushing back on this whole stigma around what is always a buzzword of DE&I. Yes, there are people that are always going to be arrogant and stick by it and say, it is what it is, I don't like it. But there are a lot of people that are totally misinformed. I give an example, my neighbor was 100%. I spent many a nights trying to walk through him about the benefits of it, why it's there, why companies do it, why we want it from accessibility perspective. And how about that? His mindset changes, just like that. It's simple and subtle. Yes, it sounds very simplistic, me standing up here and saying that out loud to everybody who's here, the accessibility advocates, but it is just taking that stigma and getting it out of the way. Adrian said this too, pointing back to state laws. So if you're looking at how my organization can bring it in, looking specifically for state laws, I always call this one out for mobile accessibility. In a state like Oklahoma, there's a DOJ settlement that points for mobile app accessibility, right? So there's lots of different ways from a state law standpoint to deal with it. I think, Adrian, you said this one too, but continue to voice concerns. I took time last night. I could not remember off the top of my head what company it was, but continue to report issues. If you have accessibility issues with companies, flood them. Flood them, seriously, because there was one company a while back that disbanded their accessibility group. This was years ago. And then they just got an influx of accessibility complaints, comments, all of that. And then all of a sudden, they rose it back up again and it stayed, right? I can't remember the exact one, but continue to show that accessibility is more than just one user group, right? That's the biggest thing that a lot of companies get into too, is that, oh yeah, we're just talking screen reader users. No, right? It's a more holistic view. And if you're looking at it from an organizational standpoint, even like we are at our current organization, is promoting the value of it, right? It's not just that we're sitting here saying like accessibility matters, we have to do these things, let's go. From an organizational standpoint, you're making better products holistically. We've seen it at my organization. I've seen it at other places I've worked at. You make your products better, make them more usable for everybody that's out there, right? And if you really are caught in a pinch, it goes back to the original question I had, start small. I have a friend of mine who worked at a company that totally just started throwing everything out the window for accessibility and wasn't let go, but he said, what can I do? And so he almost went into like a ninja mode of like, you know what? I'm going to go back to that initial thing that Mark said. I'm going to start just talking to teams about what if we just started using semantic HTML in our applications, right? Let's start enforcing from that level. And they had this huge high of, hey, our stuff's really accessible, to whoop, oh my gosh, our products are totally unusable. And now you're starting to see that gradual rise again and the value starting to be shown, right? There's no perfect answer for it because in general, it sucks. It does, right? But I think doing those small things can help kind of fight back and push back and promote digital accessibility in that way. And those are my 2 questions. That's it.
That is, wow, you're like almost on the mark. It was like 30 seconds.
Yeah, baby.
So the next audience impromptu audience panel member is Stacy Spory. But if I pronounced your last name wrong. Okay. So it is now yours. You have 2 minutes.
Go easy on me. I'm just,
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Stacy Spory. I'm a senior digital accessibility engineer at the American Foundation for the Blind. And before that, I worked at Nelnet. I actually have a former coworker right next to me, but and worked on kind of building up their accessibility team for, oh gosh, I think like 7 years. I have a lot of experience kind of doing, similar things, working with different teams across the company and really trying to see where we can insert accessibility, and a lot of successes and also a lot of not quite as much success as we'd like as well. I think what I'd like to ask you though is, could you talk a little bit more? I know you really focus on like that development side and getting those developers going. What about like the design and the stakeholders, and how do you pull them in and really get them engaged? Because developers can really only do so much when they're working with a really rough design.
yeah, that's can speak from lots of experience. Yes, that's 100% true. So actually, I've actually had this experience with other organizations that I've worked with in the past where they actually took the same model I talked about from a development side of things and actually tried to flip it into design. And what they found was there's a lot of adjustments to it, obviously, to get there. What they found was making it simplistic, as simple as this. Can we find 10 things that we look for from a guidance standpoint for design? I want to do these 10 things, right? Based on WCAG, check. And I'm going to hard enforce those. At the same time, then, do something as simple as starting with annotation kits. So the free ones that are out there. So if anybody knows, free annotation kits include from eBay. There's a CVS iOS one out there too. But there's a bunch of different annotation kits that exist out there for web and for mobile. And that group started with that checklist piece. It went rough, like very rough. So then they kind of pivoted to, okay, let's start with annotations then. But let's not do them all. Let's start with 1, 2, 3, kind of enforce those, do design dev handoff, and start small. And then once they started to see that design to dev handoff was working with the annotations kit, then it was like, okay, yeah, we can do this. So let's start to do a little bit more. But let's come back to that guideline standpoint. I want these 10 things to be done beforehand. The part that comes in after that, you said stakeholders then it becomes, okay, why the hell are you having my group do this? Because this is taking more time, right? And the selling point is really simple. I say really simple. I'm going to put air quotes for simple just so everybody knows. Would you rather me continue to have design dev handoff problems and have your designers take more time away from them to say, what should this have been? Or would you rather them have a smooth transition over for a bulk of the issues and we don't have to come back and we're not using time away from developers and designers who are working in sprint work? That's very simplistic. I understand that. And there's a lot more nuances in there. But you can apply a similar enough thing to get that culture in place. Because again, I say enforce it. It's harder in the UX space to like kind of do that enforcement level piece. So it's kind of like a Scouts honor thing. But there are ways to translate similar enough to that. I only have 2 minutes or else Crystal's gonna come up here and knock me off the stage, but I can talk to you more about it too after this as well. It was a really good question.
So, yeah, so again, let's thank Mark for a awesome, for awesome questions, and responses. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Crystal, this is Sharon. Could I add just one thing about engagement of teams and culture? And I'm sorry, but this is a selfish self-promotion for our Accessibility Internet Rally program. It's an annual contest. And I've met so many people here this year who said, I was on an AIR team 6 years ago and it sparked my passion for accessibility. So if you have a team that you want to get engaged, it costs something like, I don't know, $100 to join, and you get training, you get this whole synthesis of a team of designers, developers, mentors, judges to help you understand and just get engaged at a very basic level, because the outcome is that you build a website for a nonprofit organization, simple, 10 pages, but you get the experience of building an accessible website with a team, and you might win the big prize at the end, which I think is a bowling trophy. But it's a really great way to get engaged, not from compliance or legal mandates, but from the creative challenge of, can you be the smartest guy team in the room? So that was my self-promotion. Sorry about that.
No, thank you. So next up, we have Dave, and we're going to do something a little bit different than the previous two panelists. So if you want to ask questions of Dave and you didn't submit to the volunteer form, please do. So we're going to revert back to a traditional Q&A right now. So, but Dave, please do your intro, and then I'll let people start asking you questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Crystal.
Thank you.
Siri, make a note never to follow Mark Stedman on a panel. Thank you. Okay, so I'm Dave D. I've been up here a couple times. I think you all know who I am by now. My buddy said to me at one point, let's make a TV show about just living life with a disability and getting out there and doing things. I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do that. Because my friend Gene was paralyzed at 17. He fell off a cliff, but it didn't stop him from being adventurous. He was a rock jumper and jumped off of bridges and out of airplanes and scuba dived and all of this. I just called it craziness. But he was like, let's film it and put it on a show. And like, okay. And he said, we need to make sure that the show is accessible, and we need a website, and we need to make sure the website is accessible. What? The website is accessible? There's no automatic door opener or ramp on a website. He's like, oh, yeah. We got to make it accessible. It's digital accessibility. And Sharon Rush at Nobility has this great program called AIR. She just talked about it, right? And that's how I got started in accessibility, is we participated in AIR to build our website for our TV show, The Gene and Dave Show. And it was life-changing for me. And I'm up here on the stage now, some 15, 16 years later, and I'm the chair of AccessU. All of a sudden, I just joined the board of Nobility. And that's how much this has meant to me. I'm Dave D, and I love to work in the field of accessibility. Thank you. So do we have a question?
Thank you. Dan, you mentioned you participated in an AIR competition. For those that may not be aware, can you explain what it is? But more importantly, what was your project and how did it turn out? How did you place?
Okay. Great, great question. Participating in air, God, it was so long ago, I barely remember all the details. Thanks. But it's kind of like Sharon was saying, you're a nonprofit is teamed up with a group of web developers, designers, a group that does websites. And we were, Trademark Media was our development team. And they brought us into their office and sat us down and said, what do you want your website to be? What do you want on it? And we explained, well, we got to put our TV shows on it. And, we might do a blog and want people to respond. And they said, okay. And the design started, boom. We were right in the middle of the design, well, it's got to be accessible and we need to use accessible colors. So they used this yellow on black and white and made it really, really exciting. But it really helped us being new to websites, being a nonprofit at the time. We teamed up with BSA Texas to kind of host us, and they were a nonprofit. And it was just really exciting. And then we went in, this was back when air was 1 day. And we went into a room and we worked on the design stuff a little bit beforehand, but we couldn't do any coding until that day. It started at 8 a.m., went to 5 p.m., and we had to get it done in that amount of time, all the development. So that was really exciting. Now, it's moved on to where, well, things are not quite as simple anymore. So, you can have some more time. So now what is it, Sharon? A few weeks?
It's 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks from the time you meet your team to the time you have to turn in your final project. And then, and during that time you have mentors. And I didn't really mean to turn this into a commercial for air. There's information about that on the website. But Dave, so you didn't even know what accessibility was. And now, yes, you're the chair of this conference, but you are an accessibility professional for
Yes.
Nelnet.
Right.
I think that is an interesting journey. So you came from a place of complete unawareness to now being, because I think a lot of people are thinking about their careers and building their careers. So how did that happen?
So absolutely, that's how. So on doing the website, I was like, I really want to do accessibility. So I started telling people about it. And I had one friend call me up one day and said, I have this person that really needs somebody to do accessibility QA. They're a contracting firm. They're doing some development. They need somebody to do accessibility QA. And I said, I would love to do that. So I did. I went to this company and I worked on a contract position, just doing QA, checking the accessibility that they were implementing. And it was really great. And then we got to the end of the contract and they said, okay, we don't need a QA accessibility person anymore. Thanks for playing. 1 year after I had changed careers or made a pivot in my career, I was doing development for 13 some years at a company and took this leap of faith into being a QA person. And it lasted a year. Well, I continued on. I did QA. I went to another company. I was doing QA for a little while. And I said, you guys don't really have accessibility in here in your product. And they said, oh, yeah, we did that 3 years ago. We put accessibility, we worked really hard on our accessibility. And I said, well, these colors don't even pass color contrast. And I just tried to test it with my keyboard alone, and I couldn't get to this box or that box. And then when this error message opened, I couldn't get out of it with the keyboard. Oh, well, okay. Well, that shouldn't have gone through QA. For some reason, shortly after that, and saying a lot about accessibility, Again, I was going through the want ads looking for a job. Yeah. So then I landed at the state with Health and Human Services, where I learned a lot more about accessibility. I got to do training and just really loved it. And was working on a lot of training stuff. And I was picked up again by a large accessibility company. And about 3 years ago, I worked for them for 3 years. And then a year and a half ago, again, I was looking for a job. So this up and down thing has been exciting. And I'm sure that some of you can identify with that, doing accessibility. It can be difficult, but I still really want to do it because I know that I'm making a change in people's lives. And now I've been at Nelnet for a year and a half. And I'm doing training and helping people to document remediation, training people on everything from fundamentals to how to remediate PDFs. And I love it. I really do. So that's why I'm here today. Great question. Man, I really blew my time, didn't I?
No, you're at 10 minutes. So now we are going to pick the next impromptu audience member, and that is going to be. Oh, okay. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, and we have one online too.
I guess it's Randy.
Yeah, it's Randy.
Maybe you'll need to come, maybe I should have asked this earlier, but we had a little bit of a commercial there. Is there like a Dave D3 of like top issues you've seen like in all your consulting? And that's a hard question, but I didn't want to throw you a softball, right? So is there like a top 2 or 3 common kind of things you've seen? Because you've done a lot of consulting, right? Been at quite a few companies. So is there like a top 1 or 2? I'll make it easier. 1 or 2 things or kind of themes you've seen when stuff isn't going right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the big one, Randy, is just people are afraid of the unknown. All of a sudden they have this law or this mandate that, oh, you've got to be accessible by this date. And they're like, what the heck is that, right? Just like I was when my buddy Gene said to me, let's build a website and make sure it's accessible. I was like, what is that? And I think that people just are not sure of even what that is. And so you just need to walk them through that and explain that to them of what it is and get the point across to people that accessibility is about people. Yeah.
Yeah,
Find a person?
what? I was just saying, you have perfect timing because, yeah, you're like right on the mark. So, yeah, so thank you so much. Yeah, if everyone can give Dave another round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
So. Oh, okay. So so the next panelist up is actually me. That and I'm gonna actually, I was gonna take audience suggestions, but actually, could you go back to the questions right after Natalie's picture? Yeah. Yes, so that is it. So actually, I was going to do a suggestion, but since Natalie couldn't be here with us, I am actually going to take the first question that Natalie was going to do, and that question is there a way to avoid burnout as a person with disabilities working within accessibility? because it all seems so hopeless right now to even just exist. And the burnout, I have, sorry, my alarm was going off. The burnout avoidant talks of the past do not quite seem to capture the stress right now. And I wanted to make sure this, one of us answered this, and I'm going to do that right now, and I'm going to actually time myself. This will be interesting, me doing both at the same time. Okay. With this, so almost a year ago today, I had major surgery done. I, took time off of like medical leave at work, and it was May 8th. I went into surgery, which was also the 4th anniversary of my mother passing away. And it was very nerve-wracking, if you could, because what was going through my head was like, wouldn't it be kind of, I don't like, in maybe ironic in a Alanis Morissette way that that we passed away on the same day. And I went in into the operating room, and they have you move over to the operating desk, like the platform, and they put the anesthesiologist puts the mask on. They're like, count back from 5. I said 5, and that was it. And, the next thing I woke up, I was in the ICU, and I had like, a tube like in my throat. And I was just like, I don't like this. And my best friend had to like tell the doctors to please get that out before she like rages on everybody. So, and, and the reason why I tell you this, because before that, I was definitely burning out. I have since getting into accessibility, well, really since getting into tech, I have been burning out every so often. And, I know all of you probably know the same feeling of you're working day in and you're working day out to make sure that the products that you're working on, that the experiences are accessible. And to us it seems so just it just makes sense. But there's a constant pushback of like, well, this is difficult, and we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do that, it costs so much money. And there's just the constant, it's like, well, why can't we just do this overlay, why can't we just have this AI? How well do even people with disabilities even use the internet? Because I've never seen somebody use the internet. It's like, how are you blind and using a phone? Like, it's there's this constant barrage of people, of in institutions and organizations that seem to be just pushing back. And I had about like 6 weeks after surgery to sit and to recover, and stare at really bad TV, to as I recovered. And I kept thinking about like burnout, and I'm like, this is weirdly nice, because I'm in pain and I'm recovering, but I'm not having to deal with, all this. Like, the physical pain was a lot less until sometimes trying to push accessibility. And I know this sounds like, but how does this deal with and stop with burnout, especially right now in this kind of uncertain world? And the thing is that we don't need to stop burning out. I think there's a thing of, I got a tattoo recently, and it's of a phoenix, and something about a phoenix is that it burns, kind of, it burns and it burns bright, but then it comes back. And that's something of, I think, instead of, I've kind of embraced, like, yes, I can get to the point of burning out, and that means then I can stop, take time for myself and really reset. Because the thing is that you need to do that. You don't need to burn out. And you shouldn't burn out. Yes, this is important. The work we do is important, but you don't need to harm yourself. It may seem like, but we have to, because we have to keep going. I understand that, but you are important. The things that we do are important. So if burn out, take time, and then come back again. And that's really what I have to say. Just keep coming back, and we're going to have to do that, because yeah, things are very uncertain right now, but we're going to have to keep coming back. And that's the thing. It's like, it may not seem that, that we're making as much ground or we're losing ground, but we're not. Because the thing is that, and I know I'm going to say something right now that a lot of physicists, but entropy is the kind of the lowest, the universe likes to go to the lowest state of like entropy. And the thing is that being accessible is that lowest state, because it really means that things are harmonious, and things that everything is working together. And that's the thing of like, it may take us, it may take a little bit, it may seem like, things are pushing, but we're going to keep going. And that means we're going to sometimes burn out, but we're going to keep coming back. And there's, people are going to come, and there's more people coming down the line that are interested into this. I'm trying to indoctrinate little kids into doing accessibility when I'm doing when I'm volunteering. I'm whispering in their ear. It's like, you got to be accessible. It's really cool. It's really Riz to do this. So you have so much Riz if you do accessibility. Yeah, yeah. But no, but again, I just want to say, I think I'm at my time. I have like 3 minutes left, but yeah, just, burn out, take care of yourself, and then come back. Just like we're all little accessibility phoenixes that are just going to keep pushing forth, no matter what is out there. What the current state is that we're going to do it, and it needs to be done. And yeah, that's it. So that is my my 10 minutes. So yeah, now I'm going to open it back up to, now I have to actually choose one of, one of you to do the impromptu. Uh, and so that is going to be Julie Romanowski. You have 2 minutes. Did Julie? Okay, that's fine. I will take the next person, and that is Helen Birch. Helen Birch, also packed up. All right. Okay. Awesome.
It's Burge, B-U-R-G-E, not Birch or bitch.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Hi, yes, I'm Helen. I've done a bit of talking. So my question to you, Crystal, is how do you stay so awesome when asked to talk so much and to share your brain with so many randoms?
It's funny. I don't know. The thing about it is, I have social anxiety disorder, and I've always been really afraid of, like, this is very scary to me. Like, every time I give this stuff, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna stay a little bit after this, and then I'm gonna go back to the hotel and decompress, because I'll have to do that. But I don't know. It's it's, even though this is all so scary to me to be up here, and I just feel compelled. Like, I just feel, I kind of do it for the little Crystal that really wanted, really kind of believed in, like, the goodness of the world and trying to do the right thing. And even though I would love to just, have like a big compound that I never came out of, I know that's not something I would be happy with myself doing. So I just, keep myself going, even though it's scary, sometimes to kind of keep going. But, really just because I really believe in what I do. I really do. And that's something that really keeps me going, is that, I feel that, there will be even if it's just a little bit, makes things a little bit easier for, someone, the next person like me who's coming up, and then make it have a little bit easier. So that's kind of where that's what really kind of keeps me going. Like, that's it. And that means, talking to tons of people, about accessibility, talking to kids, especially middle schoolers. They are really intimidating because they're middle schoolers. And, and I have flashbacks from being in middle school. I will do it. I will do, little, kids, high schoolers. Yeah. So, it's like, and, just strangers on the street, like, and talking to them about, about accessibility, and having to explain about, digital accessibility and why they should be concerned with it, because they're like, well, I don't have disabilities. And it's like, well, you may not, but, we don't know the future, and you may have someone in your family. And, and also, sometimes, things that you may not realize that you have trouble with could be helped with, accessibility settings, or just having accessible products. So yeah, that's it. That's it for that. If you, we have 30 seconds left. So if you don't have anything else, okay. Oh. She does have.
No, I think I'll fill the time up by saying hello. How is everyone? Happy GAAD.
Thank you. Yes. So yeah, I'm going to, well, I think, oh wow. So we do have a bit of a time left. We have about like around 15, 20, 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. So if there's some more, if people have more questions to ask, especially any like if there are questions from online or remote, we can do maybe one or two of those as well.
We do have one. We had one a little earlier, but it was more specific today, but I'll go ahead and ask this one from Thomas. My fiance is experiencing issues with accessibility at her university. She is doing remote learning, and the accessibility tools are not completely functional or difficult to use. Any suggestions on how to advocate for improvements in accessibility at a learning institution?
I can take this, or Mark or Adrian or Dave. Want to take? No, I will not talk about accessibility. Okay. I'll go, and if anyone want to take, I think, one is figuring out if there is a center for students with disabilities on campus. I realize a lot of people actually don't realize a lot of universities do have that type of center. And so I think that's the first thing to do, is to see if it does exist on the campus, because then that's the first probably stop you would need to go to, is that center, because then they can actually let you know about any sort of resources that are available at that particular higher ed, kind of higher ed place. If there happens not to be, and there are some, there are some places that do not have an established one, or, it's like like kind of just like off the kind of desk type of thing. Honestly, going to have talks, and this can be tricky, and this is only if you feel, is kind of approaching different, instructors and professors about this. And again, you may not feel comfortable, and I don't, blame you, because it could be, it can work very well. It can also kind of, it could potentially not work against you, but the thing is that, you're trying to make sure that you're getting an education that you have paid for and that you deserve. And that means, really trying to do whatever is at your disposal. But, and if that doesn't work, then it's really, this may be uncomfortable, and I know, but that is really going to your college's administration, one, and let them know that there really does need to be established, disability services for the students, and really, kind of, pressuring them and doing the numbers, go with hook up with other students and really kind of push that forward to make sure that everyone has access to the education that they deserve and that they're paying for, and that accessibility, again, is not some kind of like, people thinking it's like, well, you're getting a much more advantage. And it's like, no, you're not. You're just getting what you need to do your work. So that's my answer.
I think there was a question posed on the voting thing for the unconference this afternoon about accessible learning platforms, and also about procurement, how to buy accessible things. So if you haven't voted yet for the unconference, the voting is open until noon. I think they're going to decide, minutes before, and put signs on the doors and make the announcement. But there is on the unconference Slack voting thing there, or there's a Google form. Yeah. Linked from Slack. So vote up the ones that you want to continue talking about this afternoon. But Crystal, I have a question for you personally, because you kind of breeze through, I do accessibility work with children. Does that mean that you teach them about digital accessibility, or you teach them about the culture of accessibility, or both? Or anyway, I just want to know more about that.
Oh, so usually it's really, a lot of teachers, like, they want, technology professional, people who work in tech, to come and volunteer. And so usually what ends up happening is, like, I'll volunteer, but I'll also, say, hey, I can help with this, like hackathon for, middle school, and I've done some for elementary and also high school. But I also let them know I do accessibility, and that I want to make sure that, they're learning that as well. And honestly, the teachers that are running this are usually super, receptive to this, and they're really glad that, I approach them. So I actually usually approach them, like, to come in and volunteer, to, either as like a hackathon, or just kind of talk about accessibility. It's the reason, like, in the session last, I guess it was the last session yesterday, I asked about, W3C, and how, was it way, why, way? Like, I was so, but having resources geared towards children, because it is, though the resources are really, I like them, they are very, they have a plain language, but even with kids, it's still not, so they still need some kind of engagement. Like, even though they may understand it, like they can understand the words, it needs to be kind of in it needs to be designed in a way that really engaged them. And so that's, so that's what I was like, it'll be a little bit helpful for me. Then usually I play video games. So I usually try to engage them with accessibility in that way. So, I talk about, like, hey, I'm like, mods, when you do mods for, whatever, that is just like accessibility. You're adding accessibility, because mods will, when you're playing a game, will sometimes add the things that are missing. And that's what kind of digital accessibility is. It's, it's not giving you a fair advantage. It's just sometimes you need to make up for, the things that are not in a game. And so, and, and that's really nice, but that only gets, people who play, who play video games. I can engage them on that level. But there's, but I'm not a teacher. So I don't know how to, I need something, you need something that kind of has a broad reach than just, specific, a specific type of kid, and so that's the thing. But it's important for kids, I think, as soon as they start learning about, computers, as soon as they start really using computers and understanding what they're doing, they should know about accessibility, because that also helps them, really the stigma of disability, because, once they do that and they understand accessibility, there's not that, that it helps to really prevent that learned ableism that can come about, as they grow older. And so that's kind of been my thing of really, getting in and really teaching them about accessibility, because then that also makes our jobs a bit easier as they grow and then they go into the workforce and they already understand these elements. Yeah. Uh, so that is it. I want to thank all of you for being part of this experiment, for this panel, unpanel for GLAAD. This has been amazing. I want to thank my panelists, Adrian, Mark, and David, I keep calling you Dave. It's David. I'm so sorry. And I want to thank all of the volunteers who have volunteered to do this. You can come get your sticker. You can, if you want. If you didn't, volunteer and you want a sticker, I can give you a sticker as well. I will. I have a lot, so yeah, come and get, everybody gets a sticker. I'm like the un-Oprah, so you don't get a car, you get a sticker. I'm old if you don't get that reference. Okay, thank you so much. I'm done. I'm gonna leave now.
Thank you, Crystal.
We do have all the surveys listed at this short URL of knowbility.org/surveys. So if you missed any and would like to provide some feedback, we'd appreciate that greatly. We will also send this out via email, but no time like the present.